the urge to and the desire to. So I listened.
And it seems that a lot of people wanted to do exactly what you were talking about, because I mean, when I went to that site, I was like, wow, it just keeps going and going. Yeah,
I do a lot. I do too much, to be honest. To be quite honest, I do the most sometimes.
That's what it takes. Sometimes you got to do it all. So I'm pleased with what I saw there. That was a great thing.
Thank you.
So we're going to come back to you. Don't worry. We got more for you. Roye, I watched your video of Malika. Is that how we pronounce that?
Malika.
Malika?
Yeah.
My wife and I sat and watched it last night when I was doing my research, and my wife was thrilled. She was thrilled with it. I mean, I loved it, but she was thrilled. And she's like, she's a geek girl, but she's like, much more laid back than the rest of us. But she watched it. She enjoyed it. She thought it was great. And she was like, how did you come up with this? And how long did it take to make this happen? And did you have to sacrifice? What did you sacrifice to produce this piece of amazing work?
I mean, I think anybody on this panel and just in the indie community in general will tell you to produce work that's, first of all, quality and authentic. It requires a lot of sacrifice. It doesn't matter whether that's animation or comic books, video games, whatever the case may be. But I mean, my first love is animation. Weirdly enough, that's how I started out as a storyteller. My first animated short was based on EXO, Legend of Wally Williams, before I turned it into a comic book. So animation is something that I've always wanted to do, but it's not when you look at comics, right? It's a little bit, and I say this with a lot of caution, it's easier to create your own comic than it is to say, I want to create my own animation, because of just how much it takes in terms of time, effort, the amount of people and finances. But I with the Malika animation, I was at the point where I just wanted to stop waiting for permission or waiting for somebody to come and say, hey, here's money, or we want to adapt it. So I just did what I did in comics for so long, which is I did a Kickstarter for the Malika Warrior Queen animation. We were able to raise $20,000, and I partnered with a studio in Lagos, Nigeria, which is, again, that's part of what one of the biggest things for me is exposing African talent that's native to the continent, to a global audience, whether that's animation or comic books. And I've done it with the comic books because I think there's such a wealth of talent in Africa that's been ignored for so long. And you saw that in the animation, you've seen that in the books. And hopefully going forward, that's something that I can do in every single thing that I produce. But yeah, in terms of sacrifice, it's not just with animation. I think it's with anything good. It comes with sacrifice, whether that's money, time, effort, blood, sweat, tears, whatever the case may be. That's just it's par for the course. And like I said, you ask anybody here, it's the same thing for their projects as well.
Well, I was in love, so I mean that's all good. As far as I'm concerned, you just keep doing what you're doing. We'll be fine. Kwanza, I was coming to you. You don't even pretend you didn't know. I was coming to you because Black is challenging. It says, what if only Black people had superpowers? And the reason I love that idea is because if you look at the big two, for example, there's like this many superheroes that have superpowers over 80 years? And so the whole premise for your book says, well, what if we were only the people that have superpowers? Now tell me how you got there, why you got there, and why it reminds me so much of stuff that I liked from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. Was that intentional, that manga retro feel, or were you trying to accomplish a particular look in that?
Oh, those are two questions, which
are
always famously asked at conventions. No, I love the two-question question. I'll start with the aesthetic part. Like I grew up, aside from reading, American comics, reading manga, and I've always loved black and white comics. But with Black in particular, I wanted that to sort of visually illustrate the concept of itself not being something that's actually black and white, despite the title of the book, because it addresses things like racism. So it's gray tone, in actuality. Right. So it's just something that I thought aesthetically really could help people focus on the content rather than like all the razzle dazzle of like overly rendered colors and stuff like that. Because, there's a lot going on there, and I didn't want it to just be something where people are just, digesting it like the way I think we do a lot of superhero comics, which is just like, yeah, punch a guy, hit a guy, whatever, and then like move on to the next one. As for what inspired it, is essentially a lot of my history as a fan, someone growing up reading comic books and being inspired by stuff like Milestone. But then, being inspired by that to become a professional in it and seeing that the lack of representation in the content was because there's a lack of representation at these publishers as well. So you were dealing with people who, no machinations were at play, at least in terms of like, oh, let's not make Black characters. It's more like we don't have that in our mindset to do it. And reading that stuff and realizing that there was a lack of presence of Black people in it, myself, people I knew, it made me think like, well, what if we just scraped away that veneer? What if we didn't try and use an analogy that doesn't work, where it's just like, oh yeah, that Cyclops guy, he's really an outsider and society really looks down on him, except if he just keeps his glasses on and takes off that costume, he's fine. It's like Cyclops is good, he can walk the streets.
That's right.
It's like nobody's pulling him over, and it seemed to me like you could tell a more real story with something like Black, because we don't have the Sentinels coming after us, we have the police. It's like you don't need some like analogy of like super robots. This is like real. And because so many characters are white, it literally was that. It made me think like, well, what if only Black people had superpowers? And that kind of like lit the spark in my mind to try and tell that story.
I'm curious though, what kind of responses have people given you? I mean, because like I read it and I was like, I like this, but how did other people respond to it?
I think it was interesting because when we launched the Kickstarter, Barack Obama was still president, and I had a moment where I was just like, maybe things are changing. Am I just like kind of stirring up some mess? Like I did have like a moment of doubt where I felt like maybe this isn't going to be relevant, but thanks America. You just kind of like, America's like, no, we got you. We're gonna keep it real. So the reaction initially was like really, really positive, like so much support, like people just, an outpouring of financial and like verbal online support. And I think later on there was a little bit of backlash. I think as people started to discover it, other people came in who were just kind of like, well, why is it only Black people who have superpowers and stuff? I'm like, because you missed the point. Why is the Fantastic Four like the only people who have superpowers? It's like, how, like, so there was a bit of backlash, but I mean that's just par for the course. So it wasn't even a thing. The positivity is far outweighed the negativity.
Outstanding. Regine, you knew I was coming. You knew I was coming, so I know you're ready. Tell me how you turned your idea, your organization idea, from an idea like 12 or 13 years ago into this juggernaut that wanders around dispensing education and knowledge and power and influence the way that it does. And don't pretend that it doesn't, because I see your name everywhere, and I've seen it everywhere for years and years and years. So now here's your chance to tell us all how you became the giant that spanned the stars here. Share with us.
Oh boy. I never really thought about it like that. Really, there's just a need. There was just a need to help specifically women of color in the comic book industry just sort of brand themselves. I mean, that's what it was initially. I was asked to do a panel at a convention in the Bronx, and we did that first panel, and people really took to it. The audience loved it, and as did the panelists. But the thing about it is that all of those panelists were women of color, and they were panelists that also had been in the industry for quite a bit of time, and they really hadn't been recognized. And so after talking with them after the panel, some of them were just like, listen, like, I don't get invited to things like this. This is not something that comes my way. And so my first thought was, well, that needs to change, just for the simple fact that they exist, that these women exist and they should be acknowledged. So from there, just sort of opened up organically. We were asked to do more panel discussions, not just at local shows, but locally it was highly important because my neighborhood and the neighborhoods throughout New York City, a lot of them don't get to see any of us, like comic book creators, come to their community and have some type of panel discussion and talk about what it is to work in the industry and how to get there. So they didn't have access to that. So first and foremost, we serviced our community and did panel discussions. And then that's when the larger shows took notice and invited us. And after we were doing the panel discussions, then folks asked, well, do you do art shows? Can you come down and do this art exhibition? And most of us had never curated a show, but we figured it out. And then we were asked, like, hey, you know, can you do this workshop? I never facilitated a workshop before, but I figured it out.
Right.
You know, and then one of our former collaborators, he had asked me if, you know, hey, do you want to do, you know, a convention? You should do a Women in Comics convention. And I said, really? You think people would come to that? I'm not sure. But we ended up doing that. You know, we collaborated and did that, and we had a show for 5 years, for 5 straight years. And it was absolutely wonderful. And that's when we really saw the impact, when you had just tables full of women and also colleagues at the show, and, you know, doing well at the show, meeting people, people coming to the convention wanting to know more about women and women of color working in the industry. And that's kind of when it kind of hit, like, oh, this is something that's really important. Like, this is high key important, not just to me and my people, but to like the whole entire community and communities across the country. So we're just continually doing that because it still is important, and not just for women. It's important for non-binary folks, it's important for trans folks. So we're very much intersectional in that way, because everybody has that need and desire, especially for people of color.
She has a board of directors, folks. Don't let her try to pass it off like, oh, it's just me. I'm not doing anything important. Now, she has a board of directors. There's a group of people who say, we're going to do this thing, and then they organize doing this thing. So this is a big deal. She's trying to pass it off all humble, and that's great, but it is important. It is big. It is gigantic. And just like the guy I'm about to introduce, my friend, Joseph Illidge. Joe, tell me something about what you're doing now with heavy metal. Was that the mission? Was that the goal? Or is that just one of those steps along the way to your own comic empire? Because I know you've always talked about your own comic empire. Don't do that, because I know you did. I know you've thought about it, and you're now here at heavy metal. You're like, should I go forth and create my own empire? Tell us, Joe, what do you want from this?
I want the elimination of barriers. If there's a barrier and I see it, I'm going to try and break it. Right? So what's truly unfortunate is that we are at a time in which, despite the fact that we've been a part of this industry since people like Jackie Ormes, you know, basically it took the murder of George Floyd and the cumulative murders that led up to that to get the industries of this nation and other nations to make a pivot. Whether that pivot was for moral and ethical reasons, whether that pivot was for public relations or profit, suddenly Blackness is seen as a commodity of value. And so, you know, what my career has really been about, and my personal mission is to help facilitate the means by which everyone gets a shot. And as an editor, my job is to elevate voices. So when you talk about heavy metal, which is the leading publisher of science fiction, fantasy, and horror, one of the first things that I wanted to do is bring a brilliant Black mind to it. So got Christopher Priest in there, right? And that's how you do it. You open the door, you find brilliant voices, you bring them in. You're going to be seeing more Black voices at heavy metal as the months go on. Insofar as latest endeavors, you know, with the Access Guide to the Black comic book community, that really came out of a discussion with my friend who's a retailer, Demetrios Fragiskatos. And he DM'd me on Facebook, I think it was in June, and he said, what would you think about a green book for the comic book industry? And I'm like, am I gonna refuse that? Am I gonna ignore that? tell me more, fool. What are we talking about here? And then we sat down at a cafe in August and he laid it out. And basically where the vision came from is that as a retailer himself, as a member of the community, he wanted to eliminate the barrier between the people and the stores. And as this convention and this panel really shows, there are so many amazing stories out there and not enough people know about them. There is a ton of people that think Black excellence began with the Black Panther film, which is insanity, absolute insanity, right? Everyone here was doing the work before that deal was made in ink, right? And so the idea to eliminate the barrier, to say, here's a book that can show you these are Black creators, these are publishers that are either created by Black people or that give Black people jobs and open the doors to tell stories about Black characters. These are conventions created by Black people. These are comic book stores owned by Black people. You see that there are now all these things to explore, all these stories, all these entrepreneurs. And as a publisher, what this book will help is eliminate the possibility that you can no longer find us, that we are somehow unicorns in this vast world, and no matter which direction you look in, you can't find any of us, right? This book is a means by which you can find us, right? And what it ultimately comes down to is everyone should have the opportunity to tell stories. And right now, you know, I have a graphic novel coming out through Humanoids in April called MPLS Sound, which is about the Minneapolis Sound. And it's really about one Black woman's struggle to create a band in a climate that was dominated by white men and the rock genre, and to become the band of Prince before the revolution. And, you know, as I was writing this, you just start thinking about all the Black women who every day are told you can't, right? And one of them is my mom, you know? So when I was writing this, I was thinking about my mom and how my mom is the first superhero that I knew. And so this is the story of the struggle when you get up every day and no matter what the world tells you, you're gonna do it. You're gonna do something, you know?
Every day I wake up and I lift history. That's how I think about it. Before I can get my feet on the floor, I have to lift history, go out into the world and make change. And I have to carry everything that's ever been part of our experience on my back before I can change anything that happens today. That's how I live it. That's how I see it. So I relate to that. Jamila, yeah, you know I was coming back. Don't even act like you didn't know. I saw you had Wash Day. I saw the panels for it, just like 6 or 8, and I thought they were outstanding. Now I want to know why. Tell me why Wash Day came about. And then you can get to the saddest and angriest Black girl in town, because I need to both of those need to conjoin for me so I can feel you and understand where you were going with those.
Yeah, the connection to there is Robin Smith, who is the artist for Nubia. And so Wash Day, the story came about because I wrote Wash Day just literally doing my hair. It takes forever. I've cut it, like sometimes I daydream about cutting it a lot shorter because detangling is a whole situation. And I love slice of life comics and manga a lot. And I just wanted to see more of these, you know, these mundane moments in Black women illustrations. And so Wash Day is like the day. I know Sundays when I call my mom, she got rollers in her hair. Like, I know she's not going to the store, like she's in the house. Like, these are just things that I know, like my friends, I wanted these relatable moments. I wanted my friends to feel seen. I wanted to create, just see more of those quiet moments that we have and celebrate them. And so that's what that came from. And I wrote it first, and then I started to look for the artists to work with, and I came on Twitter first, and it was like this like pretty like fast looking Black girl who, and the art, like the said like finna punch a Nazi. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like, who is this? And I started following her. And then I bought her comic. This is a couple of years ago, The Saddest and Angriest Black Girl in Town, because this is a reprint that I'm doing. And I was obsessed. Like, it was so beautiful. It was so, it felt so honest and like authentic and tender and emotional. Like, I just felt all of these things, especially having grown up in the military and often being one of the only or few Black folks in the room, and sometimes in like the city if I was living in Europe. So I connected with it deeply. I loved it. And once I found out that that was going out of print, I was like, nah, Black Jose ain't having this. Like, we got to get this in more people's hands. And so that's what we did. And we got the new cover. And we have some bonus process pages for the Kickstarter. But it's been amazing working with Robin. The reason why Wash Day looks so good is because Robin's art is so amazing. And I love how she draws hair, which is super important because there's a lot of hair things going on, and she does it so beautifully. And Wash Day actually was just a one shot, like one and done. That was my plan. I had no intentions of even going to a publisher to make it a graphic novel, but they came to us, and Chronicle came to us, and I thought it was fake. I was like, this ain't real. This is somebody's trying to spam me, or scammers are out here. But no, they were serious. They wanted to make a graphic novel version of Wash Day, and I was like, what? Like, this is a dream. More Black girls doing Black girl stuff and more Black hairstyles. Like, this is the life. And so that's what I was writing all last year. We're working on it now, and it's coming out spring next year through Chronicle. So I'm really excited about that. But it's been a really beautiful, unexpected journey, and I'm just going to continue riding this wave and see where it takes me.
Absolutely. I'm very impressed with what I saw. So good luck.
Thank you.
Do that. And, you know, I've noticed you people are putting links up in the chat. If you have links to your projects, things that you think are important, people should look at, please share them in the comments when you get a chance. Regina, I'm going to come back to you for a minute because I had one more question for you. Your organization, WINK, Women in Comics Collective International, it isn't the only thing you do. You are also a writer and a producer of comics. Can you tell us a little more about your comics? Because I couldn't find a lot on those, and I was really curious. So can you enlighten me?
Yeah, sure. So, like I said before, like I primarily write science fiction and horror, and my flagship books are The Rippers, which I started actually writing when I was about 16 years old. And that's about an intergalactic bounty hunter who's accused of a crime she doesn't remember committing. That's the long and short. The next series is a spin-off of The Rippers, and that's Ice Witch. And Ice Witch is about an assassin. She gets married, she has a baby, and now that the company she was working for is after her child. And the last series is Eating Vampires. And Eating Vampires is about a young girl named Evelyn, and she's the last of her people, and she's the only cure for a vampire virus outbreak.
Oh,
so
wow.
those are my main titles.
Are you going to continue to write comics, or is that something you do between Wink Adventures?
Right now, it's something that I do in between Wink Adventures, but I'm starting to write more. So you definitely will be seeing more books coming out of Lock It Down Productions.
Good. Now, how many people are in Lock It Down? Because isn't it supposedly just an organization only run with and by women?
Yeah, that's something that someone put out there on Wikipedia.
Not true.
I mean, what's true about it is I'm the woman. I mean, you know, and I hire the artist, but I also did I will be publishing Exmoor Studios books, and that's by the late and great Robert Garrett. And so I've essentially inherited his all of his titles, and he had a lot, such as Galto, Hero Born, and the list goes on and on. So I will be publishing his books as well through Lock It Down Productions.
Okay, so you do have a future of more comics to come out in addition to educating and teaching and sharing.
Absolutely.
Outstanding. Okay, Roy, I'm back. You ready for me? All right. Now, your inspirations were the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and a bunch of other 80s comics and cartoons. When you watched those back in the day, did you ever envision yourself clearly making comics, or was this like something you felt you needed to do, or was this one of those things that happened because you felt the world needed it?
I mean, I think it's a mixture of a whole bunch of things. I think, growing up, watching cartoons and, whether it's Superman, Batman, Transformers, these are all things I fell in love with as a kid. But even from that very young age, I always felt like there was a missed opportunity not telling these stories from an African perspective. And to me, it was, as a child, it was even less political because it was just about, are you guys kidding me? Like, with the amount of mythology and history and culture that we have on the continent, it just seems foolish that you don't see a lot of these things being told by, people who have these different experiences. Like, so from a very young age, it was clear to me that it needed to be done, and it was idiotic that it wasn't being done. And, it was a huge opportunity that wasn't being, taken advantage of. So when I moved to the United States in 2002, I started getting the inclination that, look, okay, now you're seeing, the superhero movies blow up theatrically, right? The Spider-Man movies, with Tobey Maguire, the Nolan movies, the Batman. I figured out then that, look, okay, if someone's not going to, create these African superheroes, and not just one, because I know we had Black Panther, I felt like there was a need to create a bunch of these characters, a universe of them, and bring something different to the table that wasn't only necessarily just for Black people, but something that a global audience could enjoy. Because people like us, like, you're wearing a Superman shirt, right? You don't love the character because he's white, right? Like, there are certain ideals that you connect with on a human level. And I think at the end of the day, as much as I'm proud of authenticity and the culture and the inspiration, I think it always goes back to that. Like, you're just creating cool, compelling characters who just happen to be African. I wanted to be, I created this company so that we can get to a point where, when you see Black characters as superheroes, or in fantasy or sci-fi or horror, it's not an event, right? It was cool to have Black Panther as an event, but that shouldn't be something that we're doing 10 years in the future, right? It shouldn't be something that we're celebrating as, oh, finally, we have something. It should be part of, oh, this is what's supposed to happen. So to me, that was the impetus for everything that I'm doing right now. And I'm happy, obviously, with the Dark Horse deal, it's given more exposure. I always tell people, like, you're going to get the same stories from me. The Dark Horse thing is great, but nothing is really changing in terms of the contents. Like, we're going to continue to be true to why we started this. And credit to Dark Horse, they've given me the freedom to say, hey, you just keep doing what we're doing. We're going to bring our resources to obviously escalate everything that you'll be doing on a whole different level. And we want you to maintain that authenticity. So I'm really, really happy with, and again, I also want to give them credit because we started talking about this in 2019. So this was before the whole thing that happened in 2020, where everybody felt like, okay, now we just want to do anything Black. So I always want to make sure that, when I talk about the deal, that I make sure that, people understand that it wasn't necessarily like, oh, okay, we need to just put something Black on our label. That wasn't the case. And that's, again, one of the reasons why I felt like it was the perfect home with Dark Horse. So yeah, I mean, really excited. The first crop of books will come out in September. The first one being a new edition of Malika Warrior Queen. For people that don't know, that's basically a historical fantasy story that takes place in pre-colonial West Africa, inspired by the real Queen Amina of Zazzau. And EXO would also be coming out in October, and that's an Afrofuturist story that takes place in Lagos, Nigeria. And again, all these characters are in the same universe. You get a connected universe of characters, again, inspired by African history, culture, and mythology. And it's just something different from anything that you've ever seen. And we're really proud of what we bring to the table moving forward.
Outstanding, sir. All right, Kwanza, you know I'm coming. So now tell me about Studio 8. Yeah, I don't know anything about Studio 8. and they now are going to be doing Black, the TV, was it series, movie? What are we doing? Because I'm going to tell you, I read your book, and it read like a screenplay. So was that your goal, or is that just a happy coincidence?
Happy coincidence, because I originally wrote the book as a graphic novel, not as a set of periodicals. That kind of happened because of the Kickstarter and people wanting to see the book sooner, and
Right.
Kari's awesome covers. It's like, oh, I can't just do one of those. It's like potato chips. It's like, I need more now. But Studio 8 was essentially the group that kind of won us over, because like after we did the Kickstarter, we were getting like movie offers like day one, like that, and it was wild because I didn't even have a lawyer, manager, nothing. I was just like, I'm just trying to finish this Kickstarter, Like, I had to put in a lot of calls, like in a short amount of time, that people be like, how do I get a lawyer? Really? How do I negotiate like a deal? And it just began a long process of learning how to say no to a lot of things that were actually pretty awesome. And Studio 8 finally came along, and we're saying the right things, the same way that like Black Mass said the right things, because we did the Kickstarter, we had the money. It's not like we were like going to people and saying like, can you do our idea? It's like we were good, and just finding people who really had a passion for it. And Studio 8 really kind of stuck by the project for a while, for a while, and then Warner Brothers came on board, and so now it's with Studio 8 producing it through Warner Brothers, and that's been amazing, because that's definitely changed things, and I've had some stuff that I can't even talk about right now, but I'm very excited. I'm trying not to like cheese grin too much.
That's okay.
Like,
you deserve it.
It's a
Serve it, smile.
but it's really good, because the deal is for like it's for the entire Black catalog. So stuff that already exists and stuff that I'm making. So that's all like like fodder for like media and stuff like that. So just working on something that's going to be a feature film, and the stuff that I've seen, the things that I've seen, I'm super excited. So I hope we can deliver something that like makes all of you excited but also proud. Because that's the thing I want people to walk out of the theater with, because we all felt it when we finished seeing Black Panther. It's like you felt good, and that's what I want people to feel.
Kwanza, you can tell us. We won't tell anyone. You can tell us.
Just you guys. No, nobody else is listening, right?
Right. Nobody else. No one. All right, Joe, you managed to slip out of that last question, because you did not.
What last question was that?
The last part of that question, which said, where is the Joe Illidge plan for world domination? We skipped that part. Don't. You have one.
Nah.
We have talked about it. Come on, share.
I will say this, right? I've spent a lot of time being an editor, elevating voices, growing in that respect, and we're at a time that demands that I get more on the front lines as a writer and help contribute in that way. So many people are telling stories. I feel like the most courageous thing that you can do is tell a story and put yourself out there. And so that's something that I'm going to be looking to do more in the next 5 years. There's a Harlem Renaissance graphic novel, a young teenage romance that I have sitting at First Second, which is being illustrated right now, co-written with Sean Martinborough. When that finally comes out, that's really going to be a statement on the love of creation and the agency of Black people to make art in the face of adversity. MPLS Sound, which I mentioned before, is really a story about struggle, which I co-wrote with Hannibal Taboo. That's really a love letter to the Minneapolis sound, and just again, really a testament to the power to create in the face of a system that tells you that you will not win, right? And in addition to that, I think the best thing that I can do is contribute. So one of the things that I do is I'm a professional consultant and editor for various clients. I provide that service. And in working with people, what I found is there are so many people out there that just want to make their stories the best that they can. And they're encouraged by that kind of input, by the conversation. And I think another thing that's happening is some of them may have been told by people who just want to brush them off, like, oh yeah, that's great, go with it, right? And we'll have conversations and there's room to explore further. There's room to make your characters more real, you know, to really get to the guts of it. So, I mean, there is no plan for world domination. I just want to make a contribution. And that's really the best thing that I can do. Pay it forward the way it was paid forward to me when I was a kid. I was to a newsstand and I saw this comic book called Icon. And it had a black male superhero and the teenage girl who turned out was his creator fighting cops, fighting these riot cops. It said, "Stop, do not hop on cop." And I saw that book and it changed my life. And if I can help contribute to changing some other people's lives, to expanding the idea of what's possible, then that's it. That's how we're going to dominate the world. We're going to dominate the world through seeding and through facilitating and through uplifting. Right?
And that's what all of you do. Actually, now that I've given it some thought, every one of you does exactly that, because each one of you chose to plant a seed in a thing that was important to you. Roye created a mythology. He wanted to create a mythology that he could then share with other people. Regina created connectedness between groups of women who previously did not have that connection. Same for you, Jamila. You told women that it was okay to be a geek girl and hang out and drink mimosas and have a good time, and we can talk about this stuff just like everybody else. And Kwanza just decided, I'm black. I'm black and I have superpowers, and I've decided we're going to all be black and have superpowers, and that's okay too. That is what you're talking about, Joe. We are doing that very thing. I mean, my thing is that I write treatments and analysis about superheroes and comics, and I love doing that because I feel like there's a grand history that happens in the scenes that we are not seen in. And so part of what we do in this moment as seeders of that future is to say these things did happen and these things will happen, and here's how we went from that to this. And that's really important. And every one of you, like I said, you guys are like a Justice League. You're all doing these things separately now. Now we need to figure out, see, here's my last question because we're almost out of time. How do we take what you guys do and form Voltron, come together and build something bigger? I mean, the ladies have already got these organization pieces, and the gentlemen are making films, and Joe is just doing Joe. Joe does everything. So, I mean, what do we do to bring all of this together in a synergistic, amazing whole? Now you all have a mic. You all have a chance to tell me what you think. I'll let you decide who wants to talk first. Or do I have to pick somebody? Because I will.
Ladies first.
Oh,
that's proper.
See, there you go, Regina. Now's your chance. No, come on. You can do it. Or Jamila, you going to go first?
Yeah, well, I'm just like thinking out loud, but I think there's probably just not one answer to this unless it's a coordinated effort with folks, you know. But like, I think there's just so many different avenues where we can learn more about Black folks that are making, like, in the comics realm. Joe got the book coming out. That's the Green Book for Black people. Like, that's one element right there that's like literally doing just that. Like Regina, like literally I was on a panel the other day, and one of the questions was, who professionally helped you the most in your career? And two out of the other 2 or 4 of us mentioned you, Regina, because you put me on my first panel back when I was just a blogger in the Bronx at the, I think it's like the Edgar Allan Poe Library. Like, and from that, I met so many people that kind of gave me the courage to think, oh, she believes in my work. Like, all of these things just have these cascading effects. Like, you really don't know. And I think that's what it is. It's the power in community and lifting each other up. You don't know, just lifting one other person up can affect so many other folks. So I think it's just like Matt and others who are watching, like, if you're inspired by this, do it. Like, don't stop yourself. Don't make excuses or think you're not good enough. Try, and you'll get better next time too. That's another thing when it comes to writing. Like, nothing's going to be perfect. Just get it out there. Start small. All that kind of stuff. So,
thank you, Roy.
I wasn't expecting you to come to me. I think, Jamila hit the nail on the head saying it's more than one thing. It's so many things. And this panel actually is one of them. I think bringing together Black voices to talk about their work and see so many awesome things they're doing. It's important for people to see people in the industry doing well in the industry. And also, I think just sharing experiences, good and bad. One of the things that I try to do more often now is talk about the bad stuff that happens to me and the failures, because I think you learn more from failure than success.
Amen.
And it's not that you shouldn't celebrate wins and victories, but I think one thing that we and I also need to do better on is, even in celebrating those victories, say, hey, this didn't come overnight. This happened. These are things I made the mistakes on. These are things I'm trying to correct. And these are the things I'm working on. Because I think it's important for people to understand in this industry, entertainment as a whole, there's a lot of stuff that happens that is not pleasant. There's a stuff that happens that is not, that could break you, honestly. And, if people aren't prepared, and if we don't prepare the next generation and the current generation, we failed as a community. So I think talking about being open to say, hey, yeah, I failed at this thing. Like, there's no shame in that. I failed so many times in the last 10 years since I've been trying to break in and climb the quote unquote ladder. But I've learned from that, and I've been able to pass that to other people. And, and that's one of the reasons why, Joe is somebody I respect so much. Like, to me, he's like the godfather of the comic book industry. You were talking about empire. Joe's empire is people like me who are finding success in the industry. Like, that's his empire. Like, there's so many of us that have been under his tutelage, and we've been able to correct our mistakes, do better, and pass that on as well. So I think as long as we continue to share information, good and bad, and communicate with each other, root for each other, support each other, buy each other's products, share each other's stories online, and less bickering at each other on social media. I think that's how we climb, and that's how we form Voltron, is, with all those things.
Regine, I see you laughing, but come on now. I know you got some wisdom for me. Drop it, girl.
Well, I think it's all about access, and all of us have basically discussed that. It's about equity, access, and sustainability. And for us as a community, just like we're doing now, and as a whole, like Virtuous Con as a whole, and every other like Black convention that's out there, and we come together and we talk about our different experiences in the industry, good, bad, and different, and that helps the next generation. We talk about the various different avenues of multimedia that we're in, and the various things we do in said multimedia. So that is also helpful. So when you have all of that knowledge that comes together and is all brewed up into this wonderful stew, I mean, there lies your access for the community, and it's just important that just continues. We just make everything more and more accessible to people. I mean, that's what the mainstream a lot doesn't want. They don't want everyone to galvanize and come together like Voltron and make things happen, because that's where the power lies. The power lies in community and in connection.
Amen, sister. Kwanza, we're going to close it up with you. So what's your secret for forming that someone just mentioned, Soultron?
I can't, man. I love it so much. I'm trying to steal it right now. I'm like, who got Soultron.com?
What we gonna do? That's right.
I think honestly, all I can do is echo what everyone said here, because it's something that I feel is really been a key to any success that I've had, is what was passed on to me freely and with not wanting anything in return. And like, I've tried to do that, and just, anything you ask me, and if I have an answer that'll help you, great. If I don't know, I'll tell you I don't know, or I'll put you on to somebody else. So I think in some respect, we've already like created an informal Black guild of, you know, creatives who knowledge share and stuff like that. Maybe formalizing it even a little bit more and stuff, you know, would be something. But I think that's always been important, just like keeping that network and that contact, you know, sliding in each other's DMs, you know, just, you know, like, it's like, hey, I just found like this like hot tip, or like this is going on, or like, can you participate in this thing that I'm doing? Like that's really what it's all about, because, you know, as Joe can attest, been in the comics industry for a while, and the industry as a whole has never been able to form a guild, you know, or anything of that equivalent. So the fact that we could sit there and put out, you know, a green book, you know, for ourselves is just another step towards, like, you know, creating that like cooperative, whether it's physical or digital, like this fantastic convention that we are in right now, you know, black woman led, you know, doing what the big boys had not thought of doing, you know? And so it's inspiring. So let's just keep trying to do more of that.
It has been an outstanding meeting. I do have one shout out I had to make. Mark C. Dudley with the Comic Nerds of Color said, what are some of the out of the box distribution strategies that you guys have seen employed by the indie comics market? Is there anything that you guys think should be better for independents when they're producing their work? Since most of you are producing some kind of independent comic, you should know something about that. Come on now, Joe. You are.
That's not a small question. I have one thing though. There's been a lot of talk about black bookstores and how the black bookstore distribution system is so complicated that it doesn't facilitate straight line connections with black comic book creators. If we can find a way to overcome that, then it's Voltron World.
Okay.
Straight up.
Yeah.
There's
Black
that.
Diamond.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Another community to connect with, the black churches.
I was also going to say Black Comics Distro by Jason Reeves is one that we should all, you know, be looking out for, because like just like you said, Joseph, that they are actually doing that right now. It's like communicating with like black bookstores, black comic book owners, and, you know, black content, and trying to bridge that gap between the content and the stores. So that is something that everyone should definitely be on the lookout for as well too.
100%.
Anybody else? Well, if there is nothing else, I want to thank every one of you, Jamila, Joseph, Kwanza, Regina, and Roy. You guys were outstanding. I love this. You guys are my Soultron. I want to see you again wherever I can, whenever I can, and you guys continue doing the great work that you do. It has been my honor to sit here and talk to you for an hour. So thank you very much, and thank you, Virtuous Con. We are out of here. Peace.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.